My name is Ulva. I'm 28 years old, the day my family toasted to my sister's new life, in our family home no less. They thought I was just being quiet. They saw me raise my glass with a small, tight smile and probably figured I was just tired. They didn't realize my silence wasn't me being a good sport. It was me taking one last look. They didn't know that while they were celebrating the future they'd secured for her, I was finalizing the details of my own escape. This is the story of how I stopped fighting for a spot in a family that never had one for me and used my life savings to just disappear. But to really get how I reached that point, how I could sit there feeling nothing but the cold certainty of my decision, we need to go back. Back to a lifetime of being the second choice, the reliable one, the one who was always expected to just understand. It all started small, the way favoritism usually does. My sister Clara is 2 years older, and she was born with a spark. She was just one of those people who draws everyone in. I was the quiet one, the observer, happy with a book. My parents saw Clara's sparkle and made it their job to keep it polished. They saw my quiet and decided their job was to not disturb it. Birthdays were the first real sign. Clara's were huge. A pony one year, a magician the next, a sweet 16 that the whole school talked about for weeks. Mine were family dinners, a cake, a few gifts, and this unspoken rule that I didn't like a big fuss. The thing is, nobody ever asked. They just assumed. I'll never forget my 10th birthday. I dreamed of a sleepover with my 5 best friends and even listed the movies we'd watch. When I mentioned it, my mom just patted my head. "Oh, honey," she said, "you know how Clara gets when the house is noisy. Let's just have a nice dinner, the 4 of us." So we did. That night, I blew out my candles while my sister complained about her homework. That pattern seeped into everything. School was my thing. I was a straight A student, on the debate team, a library volunteer. My report cards got a nod and a, "That's nice, dear." It was just expected. Clara, on the other hand, struggled. Her C average was a constant family project. Tutoring, meetings, and finally, huge celebrations for mediocrity. I'll never forget when she got a B- in algebra. My parents took us to a fancy restaurant to celebrate her breakthrough. I had won a state essay competition that same week. It never came up. I sat there, pushing calamari around my plate, listening to them praise her while my own wins were just background noise. I learned it right then. My success was my responsibility, but her struggles were a family crisis. The money stuff got worse as we got older. For her 18th birthday, a new cherry red convertible showed up in the driveway with a giant bow. They said it was for her independence. 2 years later, on my 18th, I got a nice planner and a lecture on saving money. I worked a part-time job through high school and college, saving every dime. When I finally bought a beat-up, decade-old sedan, my dad told me he was proud I understood the value of $1. He said it with a straight face, as if he hadn't just co-signed a loan for Clara to get a new apartment because commuting from home was too draining. I was the understanding one. When Clara had a fight with a friend, I had to be the calm voice of reason. When she dropped out of college because she wasn't feeling it, I was supposed to tell her how brave she was. My path, though? That had to be a straight line. Get a degree, get a stable job, be the reliable daughter. Anytime I got emotional, it was met with confusion. "But you've always been so strong," my mother would say, like my strength was some natural resource they were entitled to, not a shield I'd been forced to build. For years, I tried to win their attention. I worked harder, got better grades, saved more money. I thought if I could just be perfect enough, they'd finally see me. That they'd say, "Wow, we were so busy with the squeaky wheel, we didn't notice this perfectly good one." It never happened. Every achievement just proved I didn't need them. My competence was my curse. It gave them permission to pour all their energy, money, and worry into my sister. The moment I knew I had to leave wasn't angry or loud. It was just a moment of crushing clarity. It was a Sunday dinner. Claire had recently gotten engaged to Tom, a nice guy who was just as captivated by her as my parents were. The dinner was fine, wedding plans, the weather, all the usual stuff that kept us from talking about anything real. Then, my father cleared his throat for a big announcement. "Well," he started, beaming at Clara and Tom, "your mother and I have been talking, and we want to help you get started on the right foot." I felt that old, familiar pit in my stomach. I knew what was coming. "This house," my mother said, her voice thick with emotion, "has been in our family for 3 generations. We want you to build your own memories here." Clara gasped. You mean? We're giving you the house, my father said, full of pride. It's your wedding present, an early inheritance. There were tears and hugs. Tom was stunned. I just sat there. My slice of cheesecake was untouched. And then, nothing. The ache in my chest was gone, replaced by a strange, cold calm. They finally turned to me, their smiles wavering a bit. I know this is a lot, honey, my mother said, reaching for my hand. I let her take it. It felt like a stranger's. But you know how it is. They're just starting out. You've always been so independent. You have your career, your savings, you're on your feet. And there it was, the same old story, now used to give away the one thing I thought we all shared. The home I grew up in. My bedroom. It was never mine. I was just living there until the real heir was ready. I looked at my sister, already talking about which walls she'd knock down. I looked at my parents, glowing, so pleased with themselves for providing for their child. Their one child. It finally hit me. I was playing a game that was rigged from the start. You can't win when the referees are also the other team's biggest fans, so you just have to stop playing. I pulled my hand back, picked up my fork, and took a bite of cheesecake. It tasted like nothing. And as they planned Clara's future, I started planning mine. So I made a plan. My revenge wasn't going to be some big, screaming match. What's the point? They'd just call me jealous or bitter. No, my revenge was going to be my absence. It was going to be the gaping hole where the reliable daughter used to be. The very next day, I went to a new bank and opened new accounts. I started moving my life savings over, piece by piece, in small enough chunks that no one would notice. I had a lot saved up. They knew I had money, but they figured it was for a small condo nearby so I could stay on call for them forever. They had no idea my definition of safety had changed from being close to being far, far away. Next was my job. I was a project manager at a tech company, and for the past year, they'd been talking about making more jobs fully remote. I scheduled a meeting with my boss and made a business case for it. I didn't tell her my life story, I just showed her my performance record and argued it was a win-win. 2 weeks later, they approved it. My anchor to the city was gone. Then I started dismantling my life, calling it spring cleaning. Every weekend, I tackled a new room. My mom praised my practicality over the phone. "That's so smart," she'd said. Clara could never get rid of anything. She had no idea I was sorting my whole life into 3 piles: a sell, donate, and keep. The keep pile was tiny: books, my computer, and a small box of things that had nothing to do with my family. My apartment started to feel less like a home and more like a train station. And it was freeing. The last piece was finding a place. I spent nights looking at listings in cities I'd only read about, searching for mountains and 4 seasons. I found a small city 1,000 miles away, took a virtual tour of a 1-bedroom with a big balcony, and signed the lease online. That last week was a blur. I hired a small company to ship my few boxes. I packed my car with a suitcase and my books, and I wrote a single, simple letter. Dear Mom, Dad, and Clara, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've decided to start a new life. This wasn't a sudden decision. I wish you all the best. Please don't try to contact me. Goodbye. I left it on the counter of my empty apartment. The night before I left, I drove by my childhood home one last time. I just parked across the street and looked at it. The lights were on. I could see their silhouettes moving inside. A family in a house, a stranger in a car. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. It was just a fact. I started the car and drove away without looking back. The first few weeks in my new city felt like a dream. I woke up to a quiet that was all mine. No expectations, no one to manage. Just me and the mountains. At first, the silence was deafening. Then, it became the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of being free. I set up my new apartment exactly how I wanted. I painted a wall deep forest green, something my mom would have called too dark. I bought a huge, comfy couch, perfect for reading, without worrying if it was the right style. They were small rebellions, but they felt huge. Every choice, from my coffee mug to the hiking trail I picked on Saturday, was finally mine. I started making friends, real friends, through shared interests. I joined a hiking group and met people who cared about my opinion on trail conditions, not my sister's latest drama. I joined a book club where people didn't know me as the quiet one. To them, I was just me. Funny, insightful, a whole person. not a supporting character in someone else's story. My work got even better. Without the constant hum of family anxiety, I could focus. I took on bigger projects, got a promotion, and felt a new kind of pride in my success. This wasn't to get my parents to see me. It was for me. The only validation I needed came from my own sense of accomplishment. But the biggest change was inside me. That constant feeling of being judged, of coming up short, just faded. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. I realized I had spent my entire life trying to twist myself into a shape they would love, and it was a waste of time. Out here, with no one to please but myself, I could finally just be. About 6 months after I left, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my cousin Sarah. "Hey," she said, her voice hesitant. "Are you okay?" I told her I was more than okay. I was happy. There was a long pause. "Good," she said, sounding relieved. "I'm really glad." She paused again. They're not doing so well." She told me that at first they were just confused. They found the letter and assumed I was being dramatic and would be back in a week. When I wasn't, confusion turned to anger. My mom told everyone I was ungrateful. My dad called me selfish. Clara was apparently hurt that I'd ruined the time before her wedding. They were the victims, of course. But then reality started to set in. The boiler broke, and I was the one who always handled maintenance. My dad needed help with his taxes, which I'd done for the last 5 years. My mom had a health scare and was furious that she had to rely on a neighbor instead of me. Slowly, the horrifying truth began to dawn on them. I wasn't coming back. My absence wasn't a tantrum, it was permanent. Their safety net was gone. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to put yourself first, even if it meant letting people you love down? It's a lonely path, but sometimes it's the only way to find out who you are. I'd genuinely love to hear your own stories in the comments. Reading about others on the same journey is a powerful reminder that we're not alone. Leaving my family was the hardest and best thing I've ever done. I didn't do it out of spite, I did it to save myself. For years, I thought their approval was the prize. I know now that my peace is the prize. I found a new home, not in a building that could be given away, but inside myself. You can't force people to see your worth. Sometimes all you can do is pack it up and take it somewhere it's appreciated. Even if that somewhere is just a place where the only person you have to impress is the one in the mirror. Looking at the life I have now, all the joy and freedom, I can say with total certainty my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner.